Welcome to Getting to Yes, the video workshop on negotiation. In this program, Roger Fisher, William Ury, and Bruce Patton will show you how to transform adversarial confrontation into side-by-side problem solving.
Hello, I'm Roger Fisher, here with my colleagues Bill Ury and
Hello.
Bruce Patton.
Hello.
Welcome to the video workshop on negotiation. All of us negotiate all the time. You wouldn't be in your present position unless you were a good negotiator. People keep asking us, but isn't negotiation natural ability, not coaching? Once you're good at it, can't you just relax? I compare negotiation skills with those of an athlete. Natural ability is terribly important, but the more natural ability you have, the more you will benefit from coaching, from continuing to learn how to do it better and better. The professional tennis players at Wimbledon bring their coaches with them. They keep learning to get better all their lives.
I like that athletic metaphor. The curious thing that strikes me is that if we negotiate so much of our time with our bosses, our spouses, our peers, our customers, our suppliers, our kids, if we're negotiating, say, 50% of our time, and some people would say 90% of our time, the question I have is, if you were swimming, say, 50% of your time, you'd be in the Olympics. And the question I have is, as good as we all are, why aren't we all in the negotiation Olympics? And I think the answer lies in the fact that when you swim, you always have part of your mind focused on your stroke, on improving your stroke, on improving the process of swimming. When we negotiate, we have almost all of our attention focused on the substance, on the terms and conditions, on the price. Well, what this videotape workshop is about going over the process of negotiation so that we can all be in the negotiation Olympics.
One difficulty we often have is that the more you negotiate, the tendency is to get better and better at less and less. When the stakes are high, we focus on our most confident skills. But that means we get better and better at a few skills and leave others to wither away. We become one-sided, not very flexible or adaptable. Each of us has room to broaden our repertoire of negotiating skills.
And we're not just going to talk about negotiation. Words don't describe adequately what really happens. You're going to be watching a lot of different examples. We're going to be acting in examples, demonstrating what can be done in different kinds of negotiations. Mistakes people make, skills they use. Let's watch the first negotiation.
Mr. Gillum, I've already told you, my position is $14 million. If you want to take the station away from me, that's what it's going to cost you.
Mr. Bryant, our position is $8 million for your share. That's 8 times your share of cash flow. That's fair, that's reasonable. I don't understand where you're coming from.
Well, I get my number 14 million from what I know this station is worth. I'm the one who came in here 5 years ago when it was down and out as number 3 and built it to number 1. I know this station and I know what it's worth, and 14 million is my share of what it's worth. That's what it's going to take.
Your partners have given me 2/3, an option on 2/3 for 16 million. Why is 1/3 worth 14 million?
My partners have not been around here nearly as much as I have. I'm the one who made this station. I really don't care what kind of deal they cut with you. My position is $14 million because that's what I know this station to be worth. If you want to take it away from me, that's what it's going to cost.
8 million is our position, Mr. Bryant. That's a take it or leave it.
Well, 14 million is my position, and that's a take it or leave it.
Does that negotiating process look familiar? Adversarial, deadlocked, telling each other, not listening very well, not trying to understand where the other side is coming from, not treating the people with a whole lot of respect. There's a chance in negotiation to do it differently. We believe that negotiation would be better off if you can treat it as side-by-side problem solving. Both parties share a problem. They think that a negotiated agreement would be better for both than no agreement. And they share the problem of trying to find an agreement that both can live with, and a good agreement, one that doesn't leave potential joint gains on the table.
This whole video is a way of helping you prepare for negotiations, a way to think about it in an organized way, and a way to realize that in advance of negotiation, you can do a great deal that'll affect the total outcome. You'll thought about where you're going to end up, and therefore you know where to begin.
In other words, we want you to have always part of your mind focused on the process of negotiation, before you go into the negotiation, during the negotiation, and then taking also a few minutes after the negotiation to ask yourself, what went right here? What went wrong? What could I do differently next time? What surprised me? So that you're learning from each negotiation, because you have so much rich experience that if you can tap that experience and turn it into better and better skills, you will end up, as I mentioned, in the negotiation Olympics.
A point we're going to make throughout this workshop, this video, is to give you a big structure, the basic building blocks of negotiation, what they are. Interests, what do you really care about? What do they care about? Options, what are some possible agreements we could have? Let's get the range of what we could agree upon. Standards, how can I persuade them they're being fairly treated? How can they persuade me? How can I persuade myself that I'm being fairly treated and not being ripped off?
People. How do you deal with the people issues in negotiation? BATNA. What is your best alternative to a negotiated agreement if you can't settle? And closure. How do you get a deal?
After segment 6 on closure, we'll come back here for a final segment and help you put it all together. Let's begin with segment 1, interests.
Segment 1, interests.
All too often we approach a negotiation like that radio station owner and the buyer, almost as if we were two armies approaching each other from opposite sides of a battlefield. We dig into our positions, $14 million, $8 million. We build trenches, fortifications. No one's going to move, each side knowing full well that we're going to have to somehow dig ourselves out of our positions if we're going to get anywhere near the middle. And so what we do is we dig ourselves out and we move about 10 feet and then we dig ourselves in again. I've often wondered why people go through that exercise when the purpose of negotiation is not so much to meet your position, it's to satisfy your underlying interests. And that's perhaps the key distinction in negotiation, is the distinction between what your position is and what your interests are. Your position are the things that you say you want, the concrete things you demand, terms and conditions, dollars and cents, $14 million, $8 million. Your interests are the underlying motivations, the intangible motivations that lead you to take those positions, your underlying needs, your desires, your concerns, your fears, your aspirations. Those are your interests. There's perhaps no better way to illustrate the distinction between what your position is and what your interest is than to tell the story that used to be told by one of America's first management consultants, a woman by the name of Mary Parker Follett, who used to like to tell the story of two men quarreling in a library, in a Harvard library, as it were. One man wanted the window open. The other man wanted it closed. One man would go up, open the window, the other one would go and shut it. They got into a big quarrel, bothered everyone in the library. Finally, the librarian came over and she asked the first one, "Why do you want the window open?" "I want some fresh air," he said. She asked the second one, "Why do you want the window closed?" "Well, the draft is blowing my papers around." So then she thought about it for a minute and she asked, "Now how can we get you fresh air without you a draft?" And they thought about it, and finally in the conversation one person said, "Well, what if we open a window in the next room?" So the librarian went to the next room, opened the window there, provided fresh air for the first person without a draft for the second. Now in that very simple situation, what the librarian was doing was looking behind each side's positions, the concrete things we say we want. In this case, it was an open window and a closed window. For what were the underlying interests? By asking the simple question why, she was able to get at the underlying interests in fresh air and no draft. By identifying those underlying interests, she was then able to come up with a solution that met both sides' interests. Note that it wasn't just a split the difference compromise. It wasn't just a question of splitting the difference between the two positions. In this case, a half-open window would have provided too much draft, not enough fresh air. It was a genuine solution of an open window in the next room. And that's what we find successful negotiators always doing in a negotiation, is never taking the positions for granted, always probing behind them for what are the underlying interests in the situation, always looking for that open window in the next room. In any negotiation, you want to understand your interests. Just as important as understanding your interests is understanding the other side's. Think about it for a moment. What is negotiation? Negotiation is an exercise in influence. You're trying to change someone else's mind. Now, if you're trying to change someone else's mind, the first thing you need to know is where their mind is right now. You need to be able to put yourself in their shoes. That is perhaps the single most important skill in negotiation, is the ability to put yourself in the other person's shoes, see the world the way they see it, see what drives them, see what motivates them, so that you can craft a solution that meets their interests and meets yours. Sometimes people don't want to tell you their interests. Sometimes they're afraid that somehow that's going to give away tactical or strategic information. And sometimes they may be right. If asking why doesn't work, try asking why not. In other words, take a proposal and go to them and say, now what would be wrong with doing it this way? Often the very same people who don't want to tell you about their interests directly are the kinds of people who love to criticize. And so they'll say, I'll tell you what's wrong with it. It doesn't do this, it doesn't do that, it doesn't do this, it doesn't do that. What have they just done? In a negative fashion, they've just given you information about their interests. So if asking why doesn't work, approach it indirectly and ask why not. What would be wrong with doing it this way? Ask for criticism. The best way to understand the process of getting behind positions for the underlying interests is to see it in action. Let's return to the radio station negotiation and watch Roger prepare the potential buyer for a second meeting with the owner of that station.
Roger, the guy's a mule. He wants $14 million for his share. That's all he wants to talk about. I can't reach him. I don't know what's going on with him.
What do you want? What's the company want here?
The company...
What's the purpose of this negotiation from your point of view?
The company wants the station. It's a good station. We'd like to buy it. It would fit nicely. It's got some profits we could offset against some losses.
You told me you've already got an option on 2/3 of the station from the other owner.
Yeah, I've got to have 80% of the station before I can put the losses and the profits together. I can't do it without 80%.
You need 80% of the station.
80%.
And when you get the station, what do you want of it? What are you going to do with it?
Well, it's a good station. There's no real sense in changing. I'd like to have a good transition, one that doesn't look like we've taken over the station. Want to keep the talent, want to keep the management, generally make no waves in the market.
What I'm doing here is looking behind the company's position, $8 million, and the radio station's position, $14 million, for the underlying interests, the concerns that lie behind that. I'm trying to find out what Mr. Gillum wants, what kinds of things he needs, not just wants, but what he really needs to satisfy his concerns. And then we'll look at the other side, what the station owner needs. So you need 80% ownership in order to consolidate the books.
That's the number.
And on the operation of the station, what do you need there? What do you want there?
Well, I'd like to have a good operation, a good smooth operation. Basically, what it's been doing.
Just the way it's been?
Yeah, I don't see any reason to change it.
Would you be willing to keep the fella on?
I don't know if he'd stay, Roger. This is, I've had a very tough time with this guy. He's basically told me to take a hike, get out of here, put the money on the table.
How does he spend his days? Does he get up in the morning? Does he, what's he do? Play golf?
Well, all he talks about is the station. I don't know what he plays golf or goes sailing or what he does. As far as I can tell, he comes to the station, stays there all day, and goes home, and that's it.
We do not yet know that man's interest. We do not yet know what he cares about. But there's a possibility here that may be worth exploring. We have to work with him, find out, and discuss. Of course he wants money. Everybody wants money. But money is frequently used as a marker, as kind of a scoring point for other interests that lie beneath it. I've not heard anything that what this man would spend the money on. He doesn't say, I need this much money to buy a Florida plantation or to buy a house. We haven't heard that yet, buy a yacht. So there's an evidence that money may just be covering up some underlying interests of his. Let's go talk to him and see if we can find out what his concerns are.
Lots of luck.
You've just seen the most important part of a negotiation, which is the preparation. Most negotiations are won or lost, done well or done poorly, even before the negotiators get to the table, simply in the quality of preparation that they bring to that table. You can't wing it in negotiation. You put yourself at an enormous disadvantage if you do that. Let's watch Roger Fisher use the value of effective preparation to negotiate on behalf of the buyer.
Mr. Bryan, what do you really want out of this situation?
As I've said, I want $14 million. I made that very clear.
What would you do with the money if you had it?
Well, I don't think that's really any of your business.
Fair enough, but I want to understand what you care about, because if we're going to make a deal, it's only with your agreement. It's only a deal you want. What do you want in this station?
What I care about is this station. This is more than just a job for me. It's something that I thoroughly enjoy. I built from the ground up. I feel like I'd be selling one of my children.
In talking with Mr. Gillum, I discovered that what his company really wants in owning the station, they want to own enough of the stations so they can consolidate their books with the other stations that you've got, a number of other radio stations. That means you have to have...
I have to have 80%.
80% ownership, not 100%.
No, I need 80%, but I got to have 80%.
And the 2/3 you have an option on is not enough.
No, I got to buy his share.
See, the fact he doesn't need it all makes me think there may be some possibility of an arrangement here which leaves you with the station.
Well, that 80% is something new. I didn't hear that the first time, but...
No, he wanted to buy a station. 66% wasn't enough. But would that meet some of your concerns?
Well, it not really, because suppose I continue as an owner in a minority position. Sure, that's where I am now, but would I have creative control?
That's another interest. What's that mean, creative control? Why do you do that? You actually decide what programs?
I decide what programs. More importantly, I decide the overall format.
What I'm pressing for here is pushing to find every aspect of Mr. Bryant's concerns, his needs, his wants, to see if we can't build on them, looking for a possible agreement that meets those interests, even though it will not meet his original position of $14 million. You want to stay in the town?
Sure.
And creative control. What else do you like?
I like the ability to manage the station. I like the ability to participate in its growth.
We got management, participation. Does your company object to such things in other stations?
Roger, it sounds like to me he wants the world. He wants a ton of money. He wants creative control. He wants management. He wants the whole 10 yards.
We're looking at what his interests are. What are your interests? You have no interest in changing management.
Not per se. I have some concerns.
What are theirs?
Well, I'm not sure that Mr. Bryant and my company get along. He's just said, you know, how big companies operate. If we don't get along, if this station goes in the dumpers, I've got the risk.
Well, what you need an interest there in protection against downside. If the station starts losing money or not doing well, you want some kind of downside protection.
Yes, I need downside protection.
And you wouldn't mind his getting a piece of the action going up if it goes well.
Well, but, you know, again, I'd have to work with him to find out, you know, how he's going to run this place and get comfortable with him. Right now, we're not doing too well.
Oh, I think you're doing fine. You're disagreeing about money, but let's come back up to the money question. If you bought out half Mr. Bryant's interest right now, you were offering $8 million at 8 times cash flow for his share. Half of that would be $4 million 8 times. Suppose we split the difference between, I'm just not asking for commitments now, I'm just trying to think a little bit. $4.5 million would be 9 times cash flow for a share of interest. And you're not taking the station away from you. You would, if, as I see this thing, you'd still be the station manager. It's your station. You're still running it. You're an owner of it.
But for how long? I mean, now we've talked about different kinds of contracts, and maybe some of those would work. There might be different triggers in there.
You want a long term?
I want a long term.
And you?
I'd like to have as short as possible.
Why?
He's an unknown to me. You know, we've got some risks in here. We're putting up a ton of money.
He's run the station for 5 years. Well, you know that track record.
Yeah.
I'm pushing again to find out the concerns. He says short term. I say, why? Why does he want short term? He doesn't want the station to change very quickly. I keep pushing on first one, then the other, to try and loosen up, find the underlying concerns they have that were quite well hidden by their positions at the start of this negotiation.
The radio station's initial position, as you'll recall, was $14 million. But as the negotiation unfolds, you begin to see what his underlying interests are. He's interested in continuing to be a manager of the station. He wants to remain as an owner of the station. He wants a good price. He He wants the ability to make more if the station does well, and he wants to stay in the community. That's the central point, looking behind positions for what are the underlying interests, asking why not, and putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Those are the main points we want to leave you with at the end of this segment. The purpose of negotiation is to satisfy your interests and the other side's interests too. Now, the reason you spend so much time probing behind positions for what are the underlying interests is to be able to invent options that satisfy both sides' interests. Options like that open window in the next room. Options like keeping the owner on as a manager and only buying half of his shares. In the next segment, we're going to look at exactly how you go about the process of inventing those options for mutual gain.
Segment 2, Options.
Focusing on positions not only conceals underlying interests, positions tend to limit the ways of meeting those interests. An important negotiation activity is to invent various ways in which the underlying interest might be met. If I want to buy a building, I'll say my interest really is using it. Should I lease it? Might I rent it with an option to buy? Might it be a long-term lease or a short-term lease? Might I rent part of it? Might we jointly own it? You want to think of a wide variety of ways of serving those underlying interests. When we say option, we mean a possible agreement or a part of a possible agreement. Something you might do, it could be included in an agreement, it could be a whole framework, but it's not a commitment, it's not a promise. We're exploring what we could do. It's brainstorming. It's generating things that might be included in the outcome of this negotiation. There's a well-known story of two children quarreling over an orange. Each child wanted the orange. Each child took the position that the orange belonged to that child. Finally, like good kids, they cut the orange in half. One took his half, ate the fruit, and threw away the orange peel. His interest was in the fruit. The other child took that half, walked away, carefully peeled it, used the orange peel for baking, and discarded the fruit. The agreement was acceptable, but it was nowhere near as good an agreement as they could have reached if one child had had all the fruit and one child all the peel. So as we think of negotiation, we want a stage in which we generate possible ways of meeting it. Time and again, people decide on the answer before they talk. They come in with fixed positions and say, that's the answer. But an important part of negotiation, a major feature of negotiation, is to explore possible agreements, bits and pieces of agreements, to invent a range of options of what could serve our mutual interests before making any decision. In this next situation, we have a labor negotiation. Bill and Bruce have been retained by the two sides to help facilitate the process, to change them from the rut they're locked into a more constructive activity of generating options.
Frank, you and I have been working together for how long? More years than I care to talk about. And yet in all that period of time of our bargaining, you haven't heard a thing I've said, apparently. For you to come to us with this proposal is to undermine the very foundation of our union. We believe in seniority. You know that as a union, seniority is one of our bedrocks. And yet you come to us with something that jeopardizes the seniority of our men and women. I don't understand you.
Now, you realistically expect me to go back to my people and say, we're going to start training people at the age of 55, 58 to 60, people who are going to retire in a couple of months?
Do you expect us to go back to our people who have been on the job for 20 or 30 years and tell them we want them to have a younger person leapfrog over them to get better paying jobs, more training?
We're aware of your seniority rules, but we have to find something within the parameters of our living. I mean, you're asking us to go in and say to 30-year-old people who are just starting their career in our industries, say, okay, we're going to forget about you. We're going to train your father and your grandfather. And that's what...
Those people have come into the company and come into the union expecting to be long-term players, expecting to be trained along the way.
The only way they're going to be long-term players is if we're still in business. And the way we're going to stay in business is to stay competitive. And the way
we hear this from you guys every year. You know, you don't have the money to do this, you don't have the money to do that. You told us 5 years ago you didn't have the money to do the training. Now you've got the money to do the training, but you don't want to train the older workers?
If we can't pick who we train, we will have no flexibility on the shop floor to do the job the most efficient way. And that's what this world requires.
Bill, our people have done well by you. You're in business today because our people have done well, and to infer that because they're older now they'd be thrown away is just beyond me.
Nobody's saying to throw them away. We're trying to decide who to train.
Your people work for us, okay? Now think of the people who are your members who are 30 and 35. We go back and say, you're not being retrained. Your father is being retrained. 55, 60-year-old. Now, we lose, and they start to look at you as a union person and say,
That's our problem.
our financial... No, it's our joint problem, Al.
It's traditional in this company, Frank, and you know it, for the older workers to train the younger people. That's traditional.
Yes.
Are you saying they haven't done a good job? I don't think so.
I'm production manager, and my counterparts all over the world are training for efficiency. They're training the young people. They're training to make sure that what they do is competitive with us. They're going to run us underneath their economies unless we can keep up.
You're asking our senior people to take the brunt of your bad management, is the way we see it.
No.
You know,
They feel that you haven't kept
folks,
up.
I get the sense that you've gone over this before, you've talked about this before.
Yeah.
I mean, it's impressive, really. I mean, I almost have the sense that you could go on forever.
We do this 9 months out of the year.
Well, in the past that may be. I'm not sure that's the best way for us to spend our time here. I don't know if we're going to spend 9 months and, get anywhere.
In fact, there are two ways to talk about an issue like retraining, or any issue for that matter. The first is you can talk at each other. You also have the choice of talking with each other. You can decide to focus on the past, or you can choose to focus on the future. You can try and talk about who's right, decide that issue. Or you can try and talk about what are you going to do about it, what's to be done. You can blame each other, or you can jointly tackle the problem. You can try and score points at each other, or you can clarify your interests and try and invent some options. Now, if I were to ask you, in the last 20 minutes talking about this issue, where have you spent your time, on this side of the line or that side of the line?
I think it's self-evident.
Self-evident. This way has produced two options for you: rigid seniority and management discretion. Before taking any decisions, you want to have as many options on the table as possible. Now, in order to invent options, we need to back up and clarify the interests that those options need to serve. Now, let's take a look at interests. Al, give me a sense. What are the interests of the union on this issue of retraining? What are some of your interests?
Well, Frank well knows seniority is the very foundation stone of our union. We simply cannot back away from that.
Okay.
Remember that the employee came to us and became a member.
Okay.
And at that time, we assumed responsibility for that employee's well-being,
Okay,
for
so
his fair play.
I hear seniority. And behind seniority, the reason for seniority, the interest underlying that is what?
To protect
Fair
the
play?
employee.
Okay, to protect the employee. Okay.
That's right.
And
Also,
to,
their job security.
Job security is another interest.
to establish long-term
Claire?
loyalty.
Long-term
That
loyalty.
that new employee is going to be taken care of when they become an older employee.
Okay, so you want to promote loyalty among the employees. Any other interests?
Well, we're concerned about the precedent we might set by giving in to these guys in
Okay.
this situation.
We've
Okay.
got to sell this to the employees.
Okay, so precedent, and it's got to be sellable to the employees. Let's take a look at management interests for a moment.
Bill, the big sticking point for us is how do we justify spending $50,000 to retrain someone who is 55, 58 years old, and for the same $50,000, we can retrain someone who's 35, 38 years old, and we'll have a much more longer, useful, productive life for us.
Okay, so it's sufficient use of resources? and
Absolutely.
That's the interest.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
What else?
Flexibility on the shop
Bill?
floor. We need those younger trained employees who are well trained so that we can move them from position to position as the situation warrants.
Okay, flexibility. Any others?
Along with our economic efficiency, we've also got to look at our ability to get this passed by our board of directors. We can't just make the decision here. We have to take it back to a board. So we have that constraint.
Okay,
and
so
that's an
just
interest.
as the union has to sell it to their own employees, you have your own constituency to sell it to,
Right.
the board. Now let's take a look at some of the interests here. On the union side, we've got interest in maintaining job security, rewarding loyalty, upholding precedents, and satisfying constituents. On the management side, we've identified efficient use of resources, flexibility on the shop floor, satisfying the board, and investing for long term. As you look at these interests, do you see any shared interests, any overlap among these interests? Do you see any?
Bill, I think we have to admit as a union that the company over the years has been very fair to the employees. Certainly we don't agree with some of the things they've done, but they have tried to be fair with us.
Well, I think we also have an interest in this investment for the long term. we'd also like to have a well-skilled workforce.
Now, what's interesting is before you had two positions, seniority, company discretion. But if you unpack the underlying interests, it looks like there are some shared interests here. It looks like you might be able to invent an option here, to have as many options as possible so as then to make the decision. So can we spend some time talking about some other possible options that could meet both sides' interests in this situation?
Bill, as the president of this union, I have difficulty with that. We need to caucus ourselves before we get into anything like that.
Okay, Al, what I'm talking about is no commitment. There's no commitment on both sides. We're just talking about inventing options. No one's asking about making a decision here at the table. And if you feel more comfortable about it, we could do that separately. The union could go off by themselves. You could stay right here and I'll help you invent some possible options. You could then decide which ones you want to talk about with the other side, although there's still no decision. Management could do the same. We could get back together, talk about it. But remember, at this phase, there's no decision being made. All we're trying to do is put out some possible options so you can make the best possible decision.
And this union won't be committed.
And the union won't be committed.
Nor will management.
Nor will management.
Fine, sure.
Is that something? Want to try? Okay. And remember, your mandate here is to come up with options that satisfy your interests, but also you think the other side could live with too. Options that satisfy both sides' interests, with no commitment whatsoever. Okay? No attribution, no commitment.
Notice how Bill and Bruce backed up to clarify the interests of the parties before working on the inventing of those options that are designed to meet them. Mr. Warren's concern with inventing in front of the other side is serious and a real concern, a justified concern. People often understand an idea as an idea to which you're committed. So if you say, how about this? The other side may say, I accept. So it's quite important to make it very clear that you're not making commitments. And it's much easier to invent first in your own team, on your own side. Generate ideas free from any concern of what the commitments are. Even there, and within your own team, it is hard to withhold judgment. We tend to think the purpose of any meeting is to agree. So when someone puts up an idea we don't like, we often shoot it down. But if we want a wide range of ideas, the purpose is to broaden the range of possibilities, broaden the scope, and not just look for the best one. The best one will be selected after we've got a lot of ideas on the table.
Other options?
I was thinking if we could somehow enhance the retirement package. Some of these people might volunteer to do some sort of early retirement.
Okay. What about some other options?
Why not try some kind of a mentor program? I mean, really utilize some of these senior people without making them feel like they're obsolete.
I'm not sure how some of my guys might feel about that, actually.
Okay, remember, Frank, we're just trying to get as many ideas as we can, no criticism. Let's just take a look at this mentor program.
Yeah.
Tell us a little more about it.
Well, you pair up senior employees with the less senior employees, have them work together for 3 months, say, per department, and then maybe change so they get different perspectives. I think that would give us a well-diversified, well-trained staff.
You know, at our last subcouncil meeting, your group said to us that they were very concerned about job security. And if we go on some of these, I think it endangers their job security. There's got to be a solution to that.
Right. But can you think of any way to improve on that?
You know what really would satisfy them is to give them some job guarantees.
Okay.
You know, right now, I think what worries them is we're talking about training younger people, and our fear is, of course, once they're trained, then they come to the 55, 60, 65-year-old guy and say, hey, buddy, we don't need you any longer. So we need some kind of, if management's willing to guarantee those people, why, we'll take a look at this kind of training.
That's a really good
That'll
idea.
take care of your people. So what I hear you saying, Al, is that if retraining means getting rid of some of the older people, that's one thing. If retraining means enhancing the job skills of the younger people, but safeguarding the jobs of the older people, that's something you're willing to do.
Sure, we'd look at that.
Everybody
Okay, so those are some options. Let's try an asterisk 3 that we might bring back into the joint meeting with management. What are the 3 most promising options here on the list? What would you say?
We've got to keep seniority on the table.
Okay, so seniority, you want to, obviously.
We couldn't get ratified without it.
Okay.
Also, job guarantees of some kind, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Job guarantees, that's a very promising idea. Okay.
But I think we need a voice in the training. I don't think there's any question that without a voice in the training, why we aren't comfortable.
Okay, I'll voice in the training, okay?
I don't think we want them to know, do we, that we've asked to risk those, do we?
Well, let me ask you this, Al.
You see, bargaining, you're taking our flexibility away.
Oh, you're not making these as proposals.
Well,
These are just options you're willing to talk about. Is there any option here that you're not willing to talk about?
I think that the concern is that
Yeah.
if we offer up an idea, they're going to glom onto it
Right.
as if we proposed it.
Right.
You need to know that the first time they glam onto one of those and say, boy, we'll buy that, we're walking. Because
Al?
you've told us these are just things we're going to talk about.
Sure. Al, I'm going to be onto them long before you walk. Remember, the ground rule is no commitment.
All right.
I'll see to it that that ground rule is maintained.
Once the union team focused on the task of inventing options, they were able to come up with quite a few. It is a very important activity to brainstorm. The rules of brainstorming are quite clear. You set aside a time, no criticism, no commitment, just invent ideas. However short the time you have, it is a good idea to have some segment of time in which people are asked to explore and let their mind wander and think of things that might meet the underlying interests.
So, let's continue. There's some interesting options put up here. How would you improve on these? How could they better be developed to meet your interests? Where do you see some overlap?
I think we need to know some more about some of these to begin with. We just don't trust management discretion on which of our members will be retired.
What I hear you saying, Al, is there may be something interesting in this idea for you of improved early retirement, but you have a concern about the way it would be implemented.
That's right, don't you, Claire?
I do. How will those people be selected?
Well, let's take a look at it. How can we brainstorm around that? What are some ways to meet those concerns?
That's something we haven't discussed fully, but it seems that that might be an area where we could work with one of your options of co-designing some of these programs. Our management discretion as to what those improved early retirement benefits might be, what your constituents would say would be attractive to cause some people to retire early. That's where we could actually have probably some co-design and some help from you.
So you're saying that it might be a voluntary process. You offer out the early retirement, you offer the additional training. Our senior employees could choose which one they wanted.
We'll have to discuss that some more.
Remember, there's no commitment. We're just talking about developing an idea here.
Of course, that sounds like an ideal situation if it worked out that way.
Maybe you'd even let us do some of the training.
We can listen to that.
Frank, if you are serious in looking at our option on co-design, I have the feeling that we can work something out on your first item, management discussion with improved early retirement. I'm simply saying that without any commitment to it, but it seems to me there's something we could do there because we could provide an opportunity then for our older people to be involved.
And in some areas, we could have the older employees train the younger employees in those technologies where they're expert, and then in the newer technologies, why we'll look to some other source of training.
We may actually be able to do that training in-house, and then for those technologies which we're going to require more, we can send that to the community college, and we might be able to pay for that also.
Oh, I like that idea, because a lot of people have told me they want training in areas where we don't presently offer any training.
Let's make sure we get these options down, because it sounds like you're really getting somewhere.
Now we've got a lot of possibilities.
Yeah.
Why don't we start to flesh some of these out?
Inventing options enhances a negotiator's power. If I have a lot of options on the table, I'm better able to work out a solution that meets your interests and mine. I'm in a stronger position the more options I have. Often, options will simply solve the problem. You will have a good solution that meets the interests of both parties. Not all options are created equal. You have to evaluate them, and evaluation, as you saw, comes after the brainstorming session. We do not evaluate during the middle of brainstorming. In some cases, there are conflicting interests that cannot be solved by inventing options. There, we need other methods. In the next segment, we will look at the power of independent standards as a way of moving toward agreement.
Segment 3, Standards.
Sometimes interests conflict, and you can't find a creative option that satisfies both sides. Often when that happens, the parties end up in a contest of will, where one side or the other has to back down. that kind of contest is costly. It rewards stubbornness and deception. And nobody likes to back down. And so they don't. And the process takes forever. A better way to resolve conflicting interests in most situations is to use independent standards. For example, when I'm negotiating with a client, it's much more effective for me to explain that the fee I want is what I've been paid by a dozen other clients, than just to say, well, that's how much I want. It's hard to back down to the other side. It's much easier to go along with an independent standard, such as market value, precedent, or industry practice. Standards can be used as both a sword to persuade the other side and as a shield to protect yourself. As a sword, standards allow you to explain to the other side why your proposal would be fair for them, as well as for you. As a shield, standards allow you to explain why their proposal doesn't feel fair to you, wouldn't be appropriate according to some objective standards or precedents. Let's watch an example of just how powerful independent standards can be. In this situation, Roger is negotiating on behalf of a local community with the representative of a construction company that is causing tremendous uproar in that community as they build a large condominium complex.
Mr. Fontana, I appreciate your seeing me.
I'm Frank, you're Roger.
Okay, fine, that's good. I appreciate your sitting down. Some of my neighbors and I are quite upset about the safety of that construction job you have going up on our street.
Roger, I have a reputation in the industry of getting my jobs done on time. I work hard. I mean, there is a hole out there, but we have to deal with what we have to deal with, okay?
Well, no, I appreciate you have your interest in getting it done. We, the neighbors, are concerned of safety. Two features. There is no fence around the excavation, and the trucks are backing out onto the street with nobody there, no flagman, and they're tearing down, roaring down the street. So first on the fence, we got to have a fence around that site.
I have a fence at another site. The job would be finished in, I'd say, 7 to 9 days. As soon as that job is finished, I'll have the fence transferred from that site to this site, and you'll have a fence at the hole.
But you're going to live up to industry standards, aren't you?
Of course I'm going to live up to industry standards.
Well, I've been checking out the industry, and I've discovered that it's standard industry practice to have the fence up there before the hole is dug in the ground, to have the fence from the beginning. I talked to the 3 largest construction companies. You must know these people. Farini Construction Company, Joe McDonald, a safety officer there. He told me it's standard industry practice to have a 6 or 8 foot chain link fence with a locking gate around any open excavation that's built within walking distance of business or residential area. Kramer Construction Company here in town, Dave Gates, the safety officer. Here's his phone number. He confirmed absolutely standard practice of using chain link fences around a construction project. Burns Construction Company, the 3rd largest. Ed Garin is their safety officer. He was particularly helpful. He indicated chain link fence, sometimes 6 feet, sometimes 8, always with a gate that locks. How about getting a fence up there right away?
Roger, give me a break. It's going to cost me a fortune to get a fence up there tomorrow. I have this fence on the other site. In a week, I'll have it around the hole here.
Frank, it's not a question of a week later now. We want the standards lived up to. It's not just 3 construction companies. It's the OSHA regulations, your ANSI standards. Other people tell me they would get the fence up before the construction starts. Mather Construction Company says put a fence around anything bigger than a hole in the road. And they'd have it up before the ground, before the digging begins. Now, and it's not going to cost you too much. We've quoted a dependable fence, $8 a running foot. Concerned with the size of site you have, about 1,000 feet around there, that's built. You'd probably put it yourself. Materials, $5 a running foot, plus a gate of about $600. No, we would like the fence up tomorrow. Reliable fence, dependable fence company will put it up tomorrow if you can't do it.
All right. I guess you'll have a fence up tomorrow.
How much work did this take? It took about an hour of telephoning. Yellow pages, the telephone book, to find out, talk to people, find out what the regulations were. I wasn't practicing law, I was just finding out what the standard is. Standards give you a lot of power. If you have the external standard out there, you're able to bring it to bear on any negotiation. Now, Frank, about the trucks.
Of course, it's not always so easy. Often both sides have persuasive standards that they're going to use in the negotiation. And that means that in your preparation, you need to prepare not only the standards that you will use, but also to think about what are the most persuasive arguments the other side will be able to make. And how will you respond? If they make some arguments, will you agree with them? Will you have arguments that you can use to distinguish where your standards are more applicable than theirs? Or what? What are you going to do in response to their best arguments? In the negotiation over standards, remember that not all standards are equally relevant or persuasive. Consider, for example, the story of a young associate negotiating their salary at a law firm. The partner says, "I'm sure that you don't think you're any smarter than I am, so I don't know. What about if I pay you no more than what I was paid when I started as a young associate? Say, $4,000. The young associate says, "Well, if we put that into current dollars, that might be acceptable, but it seems to me that it would be more relevant to talk about what young associates are being paid this year." "Well, let's see, I have a nephew who's making, $40,000 in Dayton this year. How would that be?" "Well, this is Manhattan. It seems to me it would be more appropriate to talk about what young lawyers are making in Manhattan this year. In fact, we should look at what other young lawyers are going to make this year in this firm, and so on." Standards aren't created equal. You can look for the standards that are the most relevant, the most appropriate to the situation you're talking about, and some standards will seem more persuasive than others. Let's watch in this next negotiation how the standards can be used on both sides to narrow the difference and the differences between the parties. In this situation, I'm coaching a consultant and their client in a negotiation about the consultant's fees.
Tom, we've been holding down fees now for 4 years. You know we've been working with you every time you've run into a difficulty. The time has come and we need to pay back. This year we need a 13% increase.
That's outrageous. It's too much. We were thinking 4% walking in here. Maybe it's time we need to talk to the competition.
It's already tense. And the reason is, all they've put out on the table is a position, a number. They haven't even begun to explain where that number might have come from. What's the rationale, the legitimacy that lies behind it? Chuck, maybe it would help if you explain where that 13% came from.
All right. Tom, if you raised your fees to us by 13%, they would equal the average fee we get from our clients across the country.
And Tom, what about you? Where did that 4% figure come from? You seem pretty strong on that.
Yeah, we've just gone through a long negotiating process with unions and the whole 9 yards on salaries, and we've come with across-the-board 4% increase.
I must say, our internal increases look like 10 to 11% for management.
Look at that. As soon as they get out a single rationale from one side or the other, they can begin to discuss, well, is that the most appropriate standard for this situation? And then they can begin to have a dialogue. Let's keep going.
Is 4% for your managers as well?
No, upper-level management. So 8.5%.
Yeah, how about your lawyers? What do you pay your lawyers?
Well, we pay them by the hour, $2.25 an hour. But 13% is too high, Chuck. This is St. Louis.
Well, you're right, it is St. Louis. But Tom, even in St. Louis, you'd have to raise your rates to us your fees to us by at least 9% if you were going to pay us the average we get for clients in St. Louis.
Well, what does 9% mean in terms of your hourly salaries across the board? Average it out.
Well, first of all, you gotta break out expenses. We haven't done it in the past, but take expenses out. And if you combine the highest hourly rate and the lowest hourly rate, we've got a team working with you in various assignments, it would be about $125 an hour.
And you said that's the lowest hourly rate of anyone in your St. Louis office?
That's correct. Average.
Who do you have to sell this fee to?
My board.
Would it help if you could say that? That's the lowest hourly rate any client is getting in the St. Louis area?
Yeah, I think it's important for us all to feel that we're being given the best rate in town. I mean, after all, we've got to be one of your largest clients, certainly here.
That's a lot less than what you're paying your lawyers, too.
Yes, it is. Lawyers offer specialized services. Well, maybe I can live with that. It sounds as if I could sell it if you can provide me with something I can take to the board to convince them that indeed this is the lowest.
I can go back to the office and verify that, but I'm confident that that would be equal to the lowest average rate paid by any St. Louis client, and I can provide you with a memo, for instance, you give to your board.
Yeah.
What about you, Chuck? You said that'd be a 9% increase. Could you live with something like that?
Well, it's not as much as I had hoped for.
You're going to have to talk to your other partners, presumably.
Right. However, I think it's probably going to be the largest increase of any client in our office. And if that's right, it ought to satisfy my partners.
So here, by looking at the rationales, the standards that lie behind the positions, the ideas, the options that the parties have been discussing, you not only get some new options on the table, you narrow the gap between their differences. And note, in the solution that they've come up with so far, they haven't even had to agree on any single standard. One side is going to portray it to their constituency as the lowest hourly rate available to any client in the geographic area, while the other portrays it to his partners as the highest increase anyone has come into the office and gotten from their clients. So both should be happy, both should be able to live with it. That's the difference. Think where they started. 13%, 4%, bare numbers on the table. By looking to standards, rationales, legitimacy, and talking about which standards are more appropriate, they've found an option they can both live with. As you've just seen, one of the most powerful uses of independent standards is to help the other side persuade their constituents. And of course, they may help you persuade your constituents as well. When interests conflict and you can't find a creative option that satisfies both sides, be prepared to use independent standards to persuade both parties that an agreement is one that treats them fairly. Interests, options, and standards are a great way to deal with the substantive issues in negotiation. But negotiators are people first. Dealing with the people issues in negotiation is the subject of our next segment.
Segment 4, People.
Constantly in a negotiation, you're trying to focus on the problem, you're trying to look at the interests or the options or the standards, and the people get in the way. Their emotions, their egos, their different ways of seeing things, their communication patterns. Constantly, you're focusing on the problem, the people get in the way. Take a very simple example. Suppose you've had a hard day at work. You come home and you want to volunteer to clean up the house, and you say to your spouse, honey, the house is a mess. Well, your spouse may not hear that as you focusing on the problem. They may hear that as a personal attack. And what happens? You get into a back and forth, argument back and forth. They say, well, you didn't take the kids to school this morning. You didn't take the garbage out. You have an argument. Plans for dinner are spoiled. The house doesn't get any cleaner. Constantly, that's what happens in negotiation, is people problems get in the way. In a business meeting, tempers flare, and the issue is forgotten.
And what happens when the people problems rise, the temperature goes up in the room, either people react, they fight back and attack the other side, or they think, geez, we've got to bring the temperature down, and they offer a substantive concession to try and appease the other side. None of these techniques work. Fighting back, attacking the other side, things spiral off into terrible disaster. Giving a substantive concession, that doesn't work either. Rather than appease the other side, you just teach them that if they get angry, they raise the temperature, you'll give them another concession. So they learn to do more of it.
people make two assumptions. Either they assume that, look, I've got to be soft on the people. I need this relationship. And that means being soft on the problem, giving in, making concessions. Or they make the opposite assumption. I've got to be hard on the problem. I need to get this. I need to get this for my organization or for myself. If that means being hard on the people, well, that's real life. We're in the world of business. We're not holding hands. What we find successful negotiators doing is rejecting both those assumptions. What they do is they separate the people from the problem, almost like drawing a line in their heads between the person and the problem, in order then to simultaneously be soft on the people, hard on the problem. In fact, the harder you need to be on the problem, the softer you need to be on the person if the person is not going to get in the way of dealing with the problem.
I think one of the first issues dealing with that is emotions, people's feelings. They are upset, they are angry, they're doing that. And I myself am upset, I am angry, I am frustrated, I'm going on, and they tend to interact on the emotional level. First part about emotions, I think, is to be aware of your own, be sensitive to where they are, feel them, and then be sensitive to the emotions of the other party. Try to acknowledge them, see if you can't understand how they're feeling. We sometimes think we're taught as children it's naughty to be angry. It's nothing wrong with feeling anger. It's like feeling hot or feeling cold. It's a feeling. How you deal with anger is something else.
People have a tendency to believe that when they disagree about something in negotiation, one side has to be right or the other side, and somebody has to be wrong. Usually that's not true. If people feel strongly about an issue, it's much more likely that they have facts you don't have, that they see the situation in a different way, which is perhaps partially valid, perhaps even as valid as the way that you see it. Before you get into a heated argument back and forth about who's right, it's better to say, how do they see it? Is there some piece of what they see that if I knew would make a difference to me?
So what I've heard are there emotion problems as people problems. There are problems of perception, the fact that people see things differently.
Right.
And the third category is communication problems. The fact that people, it's hard enough to communicate normally, but when you're communicating in an adversarial environment, it's like sending smoke signals in a high wind. So many negotiations I've watched go as follows. Party A puts out their opening position. Party B is focusing on what they're going to say, so they're not really listening to Party A because they're trying to think, well, how am I going to respond? What am I going to say? So they lay out their opening position. Then Party A says, wait a minute, they didn't really address what I said. They must not have listened properly. I'd better repeat it. So they repeat what they said. Then Party B repeats what they said, and on it goes in a dialogue of the deaf, an exercise in mutual non-listening. So communication is the third of the people problems, after emotion and perception.
And on communication, most people think of communication as my telling you. We think of the communication industry as broadcasting. Great communicators are people who talk and tell people things. I would say if communication is the problem, half of the problem is listening. In fact, the more important half is listening. Because unless I hear you, unless I understand where your head is, what you're thinking and feeling, I'm shooting it in the dark. I don't know what. So listen, active listening. When you look at the negotiation exercises we'll be coming to, the simulations, the trials, watch people trying to inquire and listen and find out before they come back with the answers, trying to understand how the other side sees something, what their perceptions are, how they're feeling, and then communicating facts that we want them to be aware of.
And the key point is that all these techniques we've been talking about, listening, acknowledging your feelings, acknowledging the other side's feelings, putting yourself in the other side's shoes, none of them involve making a concession to the other side. The key point is to deal with people problems with people techniques and then deal with the problem on its merits. In the next negotiation, Bruce is confronted by a colleague, Mark. Mark is angry that one of Bruce's staff has upset one of Mark's clients. Watch how Bruce uses active listening to try to persuade Mark that he understands Mark's point of view, that he understands how Mark feels. And watch how Bruce tries to turn a face-to-face confrontation into side-by-side problem solving.
Bruce, what the heck are your people doing with my clients?
Excuse me?
Well, the consolidated engagement today. Dave marches in and makes some ultimatum about 2 new covenants that the client had never heard about and telling him there's no deal unless he says yes.
Wow. Well, that certainly doesn't sound like that's the way we'd want it to go. Tell me
I don't know what you're telling your people down there, but this is happening all the time. Consolidated is not an isolated incident.
So tell me again, what happened exactly on Consolidated?
Dave marches into the CFO's office, tells him there's absolutely no deal as far as the bank's concerned.
So it sounds like it's an ultimatum almost is how it sounds.
How would that sound to you?
Yeah, that's not how we'd want the client to hear it.
Well, that's exactly what the client heard, because he was on the horn with me the second Dave left his office.
Oh, I bet he was. And what was the covenant? That was something they'd never heard of, you said?
Yeah, he had an asset sale covenant restricting asset sales unless there's bank permission. And our client's never seen that before.
They've never seen it.
Out of left field, and your people are coming in screaming about covenants of this sort all the time.
And that was something you hadn't known was coming either.
Absolutely not. It wasn't in the term sheet.
Oh, yeah. Well, obviously that shouldn't happen, Mark.
Well, that's not good enough, Bruce. Just saying it shouldn't happen.
You're right. It isn't good enough. We've got to find some way to make sure it doesn't happen.
Yeah, but I spend years building up these client relationships.
Yep.
And you send these munchkins in to destroy relationships overnight. They can't meddle in deals this way. I mean, I don't know what your documentation group thinks it's doing.
Well, let's talk about that. But so what it looks like to you is that I've got these people who are sort of coming in almost screwing up deals because they come in with things at the last minute that you haven't heard about that don't make sense in terms of what the client has heard in the past. They make it sound like it's an ultimatum, deal or no deal.
Yeah, but that's not just the way it looks to me. That's the way it looks to the client.
That's what I mean. And the client gets mad. The client calls you. You don't know what's coming down, and it seems to be happening all the time.
What are you going to do about it?
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, I think you and I need to figure that out because I'm with you. We don't want to make our clients unhappy, and that shouldn't happen that way. Let me tell you what I think is part of the problem, and see if we can. I have a feeling we can get around this. My people, they aren't all that senior. They're good on the numbers. They know the documentation. They know what Hank wants. But they don't have the kind of relationships with the clients or even experience all of them within the bank on how to handle these kind of things. And I think that the part of the message they get is that, senior account officers like you really don't want to be bothered with most of the stuff that they do. And so I have a feeling that they sense don't be bothered and they don't make quite the distinction.
Look, I manage so many different accounts, I can't deal with all the details.
That's
what
right.
your people are supposed to do. But restrictive covenants of this sort aren't mere details.
Well,
these go to the heart of the deal.
That's right. And, I'll make a bet with you if you want. I'm sure that Dave sent this agreement down, to you through the mail, last week sometime. And it comes in, it's one stack of documents, looks like any other. It's probably on your desk. You wouldn't look at it. You needn't spend your time.
Why don't you just tell me what the key points are?
That's right.
I can focus on those.
How should he do that? Should he call you on a deal like this when there are some?
Sure. On one of my largest accounts? He should
Makes
call
sense,
me and he
right?
should come and talk to me first before he goes to talk to the client.
And if he does that, you'll go with him to the client. That's something you'll schedule in.
If appropriate, sure.
Bruce, in seeing that on tape, reviewing it, what strikes you?
Well, again, what I said before, it's not enough ever to just say, I understand. When somebody really comes onto you, Mark was, really starting to dig into my staff. The tendency then, that what I want to do is defend my staff. If I did that, it'd be all over. I mean, he'd just get madder and madder. Rather, listening seemed to diffuse him a little bit. And then I could turn, sort of side by side with my chair and ask him some gentle questions about the problem that we really did face. We had to deal with, a situation where the client needed to hear some bad news. If I just gave him enough space, I figured he'd probably figure it out on his own, the changes we needed to make. He came in never wanting to see my guys and left deciding, having thought it through himself, that, all right, he was going to have to cooperate, at least sometimes, with breaking some of these ideas to the client. And that you have to give people space to do that or they never will. In the next negotiation, Roger is representing a moving company that is delivered late, and the customer is angry. Watch how Roger tries to separate the people issues, the fact that they've mistreated this client in terms of not answering the phone calls and not apologizing and being hard to get a hold of, from the substantive issue of what kind of legal liability they have. The temptation in a situation where the other side is angry is either to deny that there's anything you've done wrong or to try and buy a good relationship by making a big monetary concession. Roger's company doesn't want to do that here. Watch how he tries to deal with each of those two issues on their own merits.
Okay, I'll tell it for the 17th time, as it's taken me over 4 days to find you, as you're the person to deal with, and I was treated so poorly in St. Louis. I mean, one man even said to me that he wouldn't deal with me because I was a woman.
Did you get
I was more than insulted. I have all that information in a legal file. I would rather not go that route. But I must tell you how unhappy I am. 2 trucks arrived on time. We called. They couldn't find the 3rd truck. They said it would be right out. I finally found out from people in California to call St. Louis, and they told me the truck was in a warehouse. 7 days. I could not get any satisfaction. So I am here today to collect a refund for the total cost of the move and damages
Let me
to my
first
company.
apologize both for the delay of the truck that was misplaced or mishandled, and also for the way in which you were treated. I'm very sorry. This company does not live on that. I really want to get that across. I'd like to find out any errors we have in dealing with personnel and see if we can get on top of it. But in dealing with both our future relationship and in dealing with this truck, I'd like to that we should look at that together. We want to look and see what can be done on the legal side, what can be done on our working relationship side, and on the legal side, the law, and as maybe you may know, as I do know, being in the business, unless you've notified us of consequential damages that will result from delay, and unless appropriate contract terms like insurance for delay has been taken out, there is no legal liability for delay, as long as the goods were not damaged in transit.
Excuse me, Mr. Fisher, I don't think you understand. If we are to not even maintain, but start again a new good working relationship, I expect the damages from my company's not opening and the amount of the contract that was not fulfilled to be paid to the tune of $71,000, or we have nothing to talk about.
The $71,000 is a legal question as to whether or not the money is owed. And I can't bribe you and buy a friendship if it's not there, buy a working relationship, and I'm not going to be extorted. So that's going to depend on what the law is on that. I'm happy to listen to your lawyer. I'll send him a copy of a memo from our counsel that's been prepared that explains very clearly that unless you give notice of the time is of the essence and take out insurance to cover delay, that there is no consequential damage.
Well,
now, I want to deal with that one. I want to listen to him and listen to you and make sure we understand, because if I'm wrong, we ought to pay it. I don't think I'm wrong. On the other hand, how we deal with the disrespect, the difficulties you've had in reaching me, the failure to return phone calls, those issues, those are ones I have got to get on top of, because those are ones you're entitled to if we're going to do business with each other. And so I would like to be sure I understand all your concerns, but that's not money. Money's a different question, which if you're entitled to the money, you ought to get it. If you're not, we shouldn't give it to you because there's a poor communication.
Roger, how'd you feel about that?
Well, it wasn't perfect. I wish I'd paraphrased back a little more to Dorothy on sort of communicating how well I understood her problem. The thing I did like was a technique I frequently use, which is to physically to give some symbol of the problem, put it on the table, and sit so we are facing the problem. And there's a symbolic representation of the bill, of expenses, whatever they are, over here. I like that because it makes it so much easier to think of the people problems here and the substantive problems on the table.
All right, and sometimes you can even do it on a flip chart. You can put the problem on a flip chart to objectify the problem away from the parties.
In the next negotiation, John Nathan is being asked for a raise by a talented young associate of his. John wants to avoid the raise. In fact, he wants to avoid discussing the problem by threatening the relationship, by indicating the relationship is at stake. He is deliberately, although maybe not consciously, mixing up the relationship with the substance. And Tim, asking for the raise, is fairly good in saying that the amount of the raise should not depend on the quality of the relationship. Let's watch.
I've been here for 18 months. I've been working really hard. I came to this firm because I value your advice and what you've taught me so much. And I think that now I'm looking around, I'm seeing other people in the firm coming in, hiring laterally at higher salaries than I'm getting. I'm wondering perhaps, is there reasons for this? Is there a reason that I'm not being paid comparably to other people in my position?
Oh, I hear what you're saying. You know that we're flying still a little low to the ground. We're trying to take this thing up to the 40,000 feet we think we ought to be flying at. You're doing a lot to help us get there. But you and I, we haven't talked money much. You knew coming in that we didn't have a lot of money to spend except on the projects and on the stuff that we're doing that are making us feel like we're contributing to something, making a difference out there. Money brought up between us at this time just seems inappropriate somehow. I'm uncomfortable about it.
In what way? I'm sorry. Is there...
I began by saying I'm proud of you, and I did feel corny about it. I mean, I do feel like, your uncle or your dad. I mean, I brought you along. I think you'd say that you've learned quite a bit from me.
Absolutely. If I in any way implied that the relationship was not important to me or was not the most valuable thing, I am sorry about that. It is, I've learned so much from you, and it's something that no matter where I work or whatever I do, what I learned from you is going to be so important to me. But I think we need to separate that somehow our working relationship and the work I do for this firm needs to be looked at separately. And my salary requests are really for what I think I can contribute to the work of this firm.
Okay, so you just want to talk money, basically.
Yes, money in terms of what I can do for the company, what I can contribute.
No, I understand. I mean, I talk money with people all day long. You've heard me talk money. Half of the business is talking money. That's the part of the business you know that I like least. The part of the business I like most is what we do together. Fine. We're going to become merchants, basically, for the next 10 minutes and have a conversation about dollars and cents. Is that what you're asking me to do?
I don't know if I would use the word merchants in the sense that...
Well, it's a haggle, basically. It's a haggle. You could be a fishmonger. I could be a housewife.
I even haggle. I don't like the word haggle that much either. I think what I would like to do is to say, yes, I am very committed to this company. I would like to see on a work-based relationship something that is comparable salary-wise. And I don't want to bring in our relationship and the reasons I came to this firm, what I've learned from you, as combine this. I'd like to keep them separate.
Okay, how much do you want?
Well, I look at the other people you've brought in recently who are in my position, who are laterally hired, who are about $40,000, and that's the reason I think it's fair for the work I do.
You're being paid $32,000 now, Tim.
Yep.
$32,500.
Mm-hmm.
And you're asking for a $7,500 raise now.
Right.
I need to hear one thing clearly from you. Are we in ultimatum mode here? Are you saying, pay me the $40,000, give me the $7,500 raise today, or I'm gone, I'm out of here, I'm up the next step on the ladder? Is that where we are?
Absolutely not, John. I would never leave you today. I would never walk out on you. That is something that I just would not do, and purely because we value our friendship so much, I would never do anything like that to you. All I want is to be treated fairly. All I ask is that I be treated for my work the same way anyone else in your firm is treated.
Tim was good there. It's amazing. Every time John would bring something up, he'd reaffirm to John how much the relationship meant, and then say, but how much I'm paid is just a question of what's fair in the office. I don't want to feel ripped off.
It's almost like when someone says, trust me.
That's right.
You should answer, of course I trust you. And common business practice would suggest that I run this by my lawyer.
Now let's watch a negotiation between a professional and a manager. The professional is concerned about her schedule. She doesn't think that she has enough time at home with her child. Here, perception plays a role. The manager has a very different view of the fairness of the professional's schedule. Let's watch.
Irma, I'm having trouble doing this job and taking care of my child. I came home last night after being on the road for 7 days, and my daughter didn't even know who I was. She didn't want to have anything to do with me, and I'm at my wit's end. This is so crazy. I feel like you have scheduled me week after week on the road. I feel like I've done my fair share. I do work really well, and I'm really going crazy. This is really difficult. I can't keep it up. With the quality of my work, as well as being a mother, which I never get a chance to do because you always have me on the road, it's been really difficult. I think you can understand this, Irma. You're a mother. You understand what it's like. It's been really, really difficult for me. Can you help me?
Well, I certainly understand as a mother what you must be feeling. If I came home and my child didn't recognize me, I'd be very upset. And I would like to help you. I want to help the company, too, so there may be some conflicting interest there. Let's talk more.
Well, isn't motherhood the most important thing in the world? I mean, the child's welfare?
I think that's very important, and this is a very critical time in your daughter's life. And that's a priority question, and I think that's one of the questions you and I need to talk about. Where are your priorities right now?
Well, I want to be a good mother, and I want to be a good employee of this company. I want to keep my work at the level that it's at, and I feel that if you put me on the road as much as you do, I can't be good at anything other than my job.
Okay. So you're feeling like there's not enough balance in your life right now. Well, Francine, one of the reasons we put you on the road is you're one of our best employees. And we've got a lot of demand right now. And more than that, we're hearing, and I'm hearing from other folks, how come Francine isn't on the road as much as we are? And I said...
Who's saying that?
Well, let me tell you, I thought that was ridiculous, too. So I pulled together the data, and I looked at it, and I said, you know, actually, you are doing about 80% of what other people are doing. And that's been because I've been trying to the extent that I could to minimize the amount of time you have on the road.
80%?
About 80%, yeah. So they're right. In other words, they feel like you're getting a break that they're not getting. So when I'm standing in my shoes trying to understand what it means to be a mother, I'm also hearing this voice of 24 people over here saying, hey, is this fair? And I'm frankly facing the dilemma of saying, Francine, maybe you should do more, and you're now coming in saying, you got to give me less.
Yeah, you got to give me less.
Okay. I have several responsibilities. One is to keep you and those other 24 people happy, productive. But I also have to make this company work, and I have to make sure our clients are happy. This is our busiest season. There's no way at this point I can reduce the workload. I think we can talk.
Wow.
Well, yeah, I know that's, especially after what happened to you last night. I'm sure this is not good news. I can't reduce it right now, but maybe we could talk about some options long term that could give you some relief in the future.
So you're willing to work with me on this?
I'm willing to talk about it and to see what's possible, because I don't want to lose you. If there's a way to keep you, treat others fairly, and keep our revenue stream where it needs to be, I'm willing to work with you.
Bill, what did you think of Irma's performance there? What did you see?
I thought Irma did a beautiful job of separating the people from the problem, being soft on the person while remaining hard on the problem, keeping the company's interests in mind.
No, she's certainly able to be firm and friendly at the same time.
It really makes a difference when you can do that.
It's not just the words, it's the tone, it's the spirit, it's the intent that lie behind the words.
Well, all of these techniques are more than just, words or formulas that you memorize. They don't work as formulas. You really have to mean it. And that's why, that's why dealing with people is hard. You have to make this part of you and really make it work. But if you can, it'll make a big difference.
In every negotiation, there are people problems. When these loom large, when they become important, you want to get the first basic point. Disentangle the people issues from the substantive ones of price, terms, conditions, whatever you have. Just take them apart. Deal with the substance on its merits. But don't try and buy the relationship. Don't give in on the substance in order to improve their personal relationship. Deal with the substance, disentangle it, and then turn to the people problems.
Deal with the people problems using people techniques. Acknowledge your emotions and theirs without blaming one side or the other. Listen actively, put yourself in their shoes and understand how they see it. Those are the techniques that allow you to make them feel respected and well treated.
Above all, turn a face-to-face confrontation into side-by-side problem solving. So you're both sitting on the same side of the table facing the problem. You're attacking the problem jointly, not the people.
Segment 5, Alternatives.
In every negotiation, there's a dilemma. Shall I risk the mistake of walking away without agreement, or risk the mistake of signing an agreement I wish I had to sign, regretting it? Every negotiator feels uncertain. Is this deal good enough? Should I walk? Should I not? If I walk, I may get to the door, look out, and discover it's awful. If I stay at the table, I may sign an agreement when there was a better deal around the corner. The answer to this dilemma, the solution again, is preparation. Before you sit down at the table, know what you will do if you walk away. What is your best self-help alternative? We call this your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And I want to have that in my pocket. I want to know just what I'm going to do. That is the measure of the success of any negotiation. Unless it's better than that, I ought to walk away. If it is better than that, I want to stay and make sure I don't make a mistake by walking out to something worse than what I can agree to here. When we use the word option, we mean possible agreements. If I'm buying a car, I'm thinking of getting one kind of car or another. I'm thinking of having special features on it, special paint job. We're looking at the possible terms of an agreement. Cash payment, installments, all those things. When you use the word alternative, we mean deals I can make away from the table. What other cars could I get? Second-hand car, another dealer, things over there. We're looking at my self-help alternative as far as this negotiation goes. It greatly strengthens my hand in this negotiation if I already know what's the best deal I can get down the street. One town we know about was negotiating with a business over the size of the business's contribution to the town. The business owed something to the town for fire and police protection. It negotiated every year and paid a fairly small contribution to the town. The town wanted more money, but they felt very weak. If the business said nothing, they couldn't do anything about it. They looked at their best alternative. They said, if we do not agree on the business's contribution to the town, what can we do? Someone said, hey, we can have a referendum and expand the town limits so they include the whole plant in the town. Then we can assess taxes. We could charge them the full tax rate on their industrial plant. Knowing that alternative strengthened the hands of the town in the next negotiation, and they were able to get a much better deal. As you look ahead, we want to understand the concept of your self-help alternative. What you will do, you want to look at the range of possibilities, find the best. That's your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Now let's look at Bill Urey, help an account team prepare for negotiation by understanding their walkaway alternative, by understanding their BATNA.
So I just have one question for both of you. What are you going to do if you don't make the sale?
It's not going to happen.
No. I mean, there's, no question involved. We're making the sale. We're ready.
It's all
we're
here.
Going
We've been working on this for 6 months. It's all ready to go. Dorothy and I have been working our chops off to get this thing set.
Okay, well, I realize that.
We have
But let's say it's, what is it, 95% sure that you're going to do the deal?
It's 99% sure.
99%.
We're not even looking at the one.
Okay, well, let's just look at that 1% for a moment.
Why?
Because you don't want to go into that negotiation with one hand tied behind your back.
It isn't.
No, when you go into a negotiation, you
25% of my
need to
pay
know
this year, probably.
what you're going to do if the negotiation fails.
It's not
What's
gonna
the
fail.
harm in it? Let's take a look. Preparation. Know your walkaway alternative. At what point would you walk?
We can't.
Would you
That's
take
not
any
even
deal?
in consideration.
Would
No,
you take
because
any
he's
deal?
gonna sign this.
Any deal whatsoever?
Well, of course not any deal. The deal that
Okay,
we propose we're going to take.
But what if they don't go with it? Or what if it's delayed? What's going to happen? Let's just take a look. It's just useful to take a look at what is your walkaway alternative. You're going to negotiate with more confidence if you know what your walkaway alternative is.
I didn't even know this. I thought this was the sign-off. I didn't even know the negotiation already happened for the last 6 months.
Yeah, this is supposed to be just sign on the dotted line.
Yeah, I mean, we're ready.
This is a common and wholly understandable response, this kind of resistance to figuring out what are you going to do if the negotiation fails. In this case, these two have put everything into this deal. They don't want to even think about what's going to happen if the negotiation fails. Yet it's a classic mistake not to know what you're going to do if the negotiation fails. Knowing your best alternative gives you confidence, and that confidence translates into power. It's absolutely essential before you go into a negotiation that you know what your best alternative to a negotiated agreement is. So, where are we? What are you going to do?
We're in shock.
Just think about it for a moment.
Well, we can do what we always do, I guess, and market to some other people.
Yeah.
Try to.
Okay, so that's one.
Start this
You got
all
one
over
alternative.
again.
And who would you market it to?
I mean, there are two people we planned on, two clients we planned on calling after we sign this today to start our next 6-month routine. And, High Output's one, and we were going to call
PD Design is the other.
PD Design? Have you talked to these people before?
I mean, we've made a couple initial calls, but nothing.
Nothing serious. We really haven't had time, given the amount of effort we've been putting into this deal.
That's understandable. But let me ask you, could they, if you did do a deal with them, could they use most of you could take advantage of most of the effort you've already put into
I mean, we'd have
this
to.
proposal?
We'd have to structure things differently. The specs would be different, but yeah.
Yeah. Would it be useful to meet with PD and High Output before the meeting? Find out what the chances are for a sale? Explore it with them?
You know the people at PD. Who would we call?
Well, we could call their marketing right away.
I could do that.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be that hard. I
No.
mean, making a phone call isn't that hard to what?
No.
Set something up?
Yeah, we could.
And actually have a conversation with them and
Yeah.
some initial explorations?
Yeah.
Does that make you feel better?
I mean, if this is the scenario that we're buying into, I guess it would. I didn't plan on it, but, you know, yeah, I guess it would.
The facts are not immutable. Not only should you know your BATNA, but you should think about what you can do to improve your BATNA. What can you do to improve your walkaway alternative? Are there steps you can take? In this case, there are steps that they can take to not just know that they could go to another client, but actually develop another proposal so that they've got something in their back pocket when they negotiate. If something goes wrong in that negotiation, they're going to negotiate with more confidence because they can pat their back pocket and know exactly what they're going to do if the negotiation fails. That's the power of knowing your best alternative and of improving it. Now, for a moment, let's just flip the tables here. What about their BATNA? What about their best alternative to a negotiated agreement? Can they just go ahead and...
It's not good for them at this point.
Why not?
All the time they've put into it.
Yeah.
All the meetings we've had, the specifications we've designed specifically for them.
Well, Dorothy, they could, if they wanted to, they could go out and try to get another vendor to
Yeah, but
design
that's going to cost a lot of money, and it's going to be a lot of time, and they have, they have this end date. We're settled on when we're going to go in. They've got the service contract, and I'm sure their clients are waiting on it. That's why we're sure they're not going to back out, but the truth is, it's not a good idea for them either.
They haven't pulled this as much, but other people have. They'll call over our heads. They'll call our head of marketing and just talk directly to them.
And what's your head of marketing likely to do?
Unfortunately, if we don't talk to him, he may accept whatever deal they offer.
Is that what he's done in the past?
Well,
not exactly, but
it would
there
be
have
better
been
if-
occasions when, we've looked like we've said, no, we won't give in, and lo and behold, we find out through channels that we cut the price by 10% or something like that.
I think that we should have a meeting with Hank.
That would be useful, to meet with Hank
And let him know what we were thinking in case something happens.
Okay.
And I want him to back us up.
Yeah.
We should talk about how far we'll go and then have him back us up 100%. So that they know we're talking for the company.
Knowing their BATNA is just as important as knowing yours. It gives you a sense of self-confidence when you realize that maybe you thought their best alternative was a very good idea. But when you look at it more closely, as these two have just done, you realize that maybe their walkaway alternative isn't so good. And that gives you more confidence in the negotiating situation.
This account team, knowing their BATNA, understanding what they will do if agreement is not reached, is now well prepared to handle anything that happens. Many people confuse the concept of a BATNA with what they're familiar with, a bottom line. I won't pay more than this, I won't pay more than that. Maybe you need that. Maybe you want it, maybe you have limits on your authority. But far more powerful than any arbitrary bottom line that you yourself have set is the reality of what you will do if you walk away. What is the best outcome you can get for yourself without the consent of the person with whom you're negotiating? Let's see what happens in this negotiation when the account team meets the other side.
John.
Dorothy.
Good to see you. Thanks.
Good to see you.
John,
Paul.
good to see you again.
Good to see you.
How are you?
Sorry I'm late.
No problem.
So, are we ready to do a little business today?
We sure are.
Hope so.
Good. Well, I've just finished meeting with my committee. We love the technology. We like everything you've done, all your proposals. We're really excited about it. But in order to make this deal finalized, you people are going to have to cut by 15%.
Wow.
Wow. Not what we expected.
15% is a whopping amount of money in this deal, John.
I understand that, but that's what we're asking you to do.
Quite frankly, I'm surprised that this came up at this point in the negotiation. We had thought that all the financial end had been settled earlier.
What happened?
The economy happened. I mean, to be frank with you, we discussed it. We feel there's room for you to move here. We want to get the best deal we can.
Is there anything specific we can do to keep the deal we have on the table at this point?
You tell me.
Well, at some point we have to make a decision. But we do have other options. We have other resources that we could utilize.
Oh, wait a minute. I can't believe you even think about walking on a deal like this.
I'd hate to. It'd be the last thing I'd want to do. John, really. I mean, we value your business. We've all been this together for 6 months. we thought we were going to sign here, so it's the last thing we'd like to do. But we have to be ready for anything, and, you know, we do have other options that we could consider, or there's a possibility of shelving the whole thing if it just has to be worked out monetarily.
Wait a minute. Maybe the simplest thing to do would be for me to give Hank a call.
You could do that. We just got off the phone with him, and he's behind us.
He's seen this deal, John, and I think that he knows what's in it and would support it both on the technology side and on the financial side. But you should feel free to call him. He's there, as Dorothy said. We've met with him and everything, and he'd be perfectly willing to talk with you about this.
Okay. I feel your resistance, but I think you should know. I mean, there are other vendors out there, and we have lots of options. There's a lot of other good products out there.
That's true. There are, but have you considered at all how much time it took us to get to this point, and just to get to the beginning specific stage of design, what it would take with them? I mean, we were just thinking the other day of what a relationship we have now, the three of us.
We
And
don't
just
wanna
starting
lose
off on
this
square
deal.
one. I don't want to start off on square one with someone else. It's the last thing I'd like to do.
We think it would probably be a disaster for both of us if this deal falls apart at this point in time.
What do you mean?
Well, we've invested months of effort. We've had project teams working with your people. We've been around your plants. We've met with people. And we've tried to put together a proposal that makes some sense. We've invested both personally and credibility-wise an enormous amount of time in this. So the last thing we want to do is have it fall apart now. But we think it would be bad, as I say, for both of us, because as far as we can tell, this is sort of one link in a chain for you and part of your strategy to make yourself more competitive. And to not do this now seems to us like it would set you back a great deal.
The issue is we like the product the way it is. Obviously, we want to get the best deal we can. Quite frankly, I hadn't really thought about my own investment so far in your proposal. I think I need to rethink it. Is there anything you could give me in terms of outlining, perhaps on paper for me?
In working with the different people to put this together, I've put together just a list of all the specifications I understand that you want this project to satisfy in order to meet the needs of the people down in the end users, essentially, who are going to use this thing. That's all in here. This is work I think you'd have to do again if you started over, and someone on your team probably wants to look and see how much time and effort you think it would take for you to do that. As I said, we'd prefer, I can share this with you, we'd prefer that we not go that way, either one of us. But at some point in time, as you've mentioned, you'll need to make a decision as well. So that may help with some of the people on the committee.
John, it would be good to let the committee know that if they want to change the terms on the financial end of the proposal, that's fine. We'll be happy to do that. But once those are open for renegotiation, all the terms are open for renegotiation. And I happen to have some people on my team who would love to do some renegotiation. I don't know if that would be the most positive thing to happen to the three of us right now. If we could avoid it, it may be in our best interest. But it would behoove us to let them know.
I'll do that.
So when do you think that you could come back with a decision?
24 hours?
That would help because we need to figure out now whether or not to schedule some of the people who are currently assigned to this project. And at this point in time, I really need to know from you guys soon whether we're going to go forward or not.
All right, well, 24 hours it is then, if you can live with that.
We can imagine how shaken this team might have been, faced with a demand for a 15% cut in the price if they had not looked at the alternatives. Instead, they studied their own alternative. They used a week to improve it by touching base with their boss to make sure they weren't bypassed, by exploring a new account to see how the team would be reallocated. And they also thought about the other side's BATNA, what they would do if the agreement broke down. And they did some research on that. In the negotiation, they did not collapse. Many teams at the last minute, many negotiators, faced with a last-minute demand for a concession, just give in. They say, oh, we can't walk away from this deal now. If you thought about your own alternative, and if you thought about the other side's alternative, you give them a little check. Do some reality testing and say, you know, this is bad for you. If it breaks down, it's bad for us. Noticing how bad it is for each side makes it possible for them to get together, to reach agreement in their mutual interest. The key points in this segment are to explore your alternatives Explore what you'll do if you do not reach agreement. See if you can improve them. And then consider the alternatives facing the other side. What is their BATNA? Now we've been over the basic elements of negotiation. We've looked at interests, options, standards, BATNA, the people problems. The question remains, how do you put them together? How do we get to agreement? We'll look at that in the next segment on closure.
Segment 6, Closure.
Most people think negotiation is arguing about the terms, arguing, in other words, about the substance, the price, for instance. Just as important, negotiation is about the process, about how you get there, about how you produce a workable agreement that's good for both sides. Now, some people will say, I don't care which road I take as long as it gets me there. The answer is, you may not get there unless you take the right road. The key in negotiation is to focus on that process. Two common mistakes people make in negotiation. One is not to think about closure until you're at the very end of a negotiation. Effective negotiators at the very beginning of the negotiation think long and hard about where exactly they want to end up. They think about what kind of agreement might meet their interests. They make that as specific and as operational as they can, and then they don't lock themselves in. That's the second mistake people make, is that they lock themselves in right at the beginning. They jump right into the process, take a firm position, and lock themselves in. That produces the rigidification of the negotiation that makes effective negotiation so difficult. In fact, a useful rule of thumb is to spend the first half of the negotiation not talking about price, not talking about terms. Just spend it identifying interests, inventing options to satisfy those interests, talking about possible standards, and only then, towards the end of the negotiation, in the second half, talking about price. Now, how do you do that? How do you talk about price without locking yourself in? How do you talk about the substance without committing yourself? Let me unpack the process for you. In the negotiation you're about to see, Roger and Bruce are negotiating to set up a joint venture to produce and distribute educational materials that will include text, video, and other components. The other side is a production and distribution company that has a unique ability to make these kinds of materials. This negotiation will take place in several stages. An early step in any process is to identify the issues on which agreement needs to be reached. In stage 1, you will see the parties identify these issues. Let's watch.
All right, we've got a lot of options on the table. I think we've got enough. Now's the time to figure out what questions we have to resolve in order to get to an agreement. What are a list of the issues that we've got to get together, get our heads together on?
I agree. We have a few loose ends in terms of our final issues, so.
Okay, one is royalties on my list.
Okay.
That's author's royalties, what we get off the top. And then there's the contribution question of who puts in what. We got to get that clarified.
And what comes out the other?
In terms of cash and in-kind services.
Cash.
Right.
And in-kind, meaning talent, services, time, professionals, so forth on that. What other...
Well, there's then what is the allocation of proceeds coming out?
Profits.
And there's an issue about the copyright, Roger.
Well, I think there's no issue about that. I think...
Well, I've heard from them it's important to have a joint copyright. I know we're not so keen on that, but we should talk about it.
Yeah, that's a key part of the contract, has to be how to deal with the copyright issue.
Okay, how to deal with the copyright. Whatever the answer is, it's on the list of issues.
And we should probably just make a note of it. We need we need a dispute resolution clause of some kind. We ought to make sure that we're going to do like mediation, not arbitration.
I think we can probably take your advice on that particular topic.
Okay.
That's our field. Okay, well, on each of these issues, we want to make sure we got our hands around the problem, and then we'll start going right down and seeing what they're going to look like in a contract. If we had a contract, how it would cover these and the other stuff for which we've already agreed. Now, on the contribution, what are you talking about? What do you contribute? We're contributing the ideas. We're contributing some talent on the videotape. We're contributing the book that's going to be part of the course. And you'll have a couple of cameramen shooting some stuff. Is that it? And some advertising, I guess.
For the video, yes. A little more than that.
Yeah, I mean, you've been in the business for some time now, writing books and publishing articles. This is really going to take you to a new level of exposure to the public. We're going to have a complete package here, and once the course hits the marketplace, people are going to get very excited about it. And creating that whole package is what we bring to the table.
How do we weigh cash versus the in-kind contributions? Is there a standard or a precedent on that?
There are standards. We've done deals with previous authors groups. There are other joint venture companies like ours that have done productions similar to this, nothing quite like it.
Can you show us some of those agreements, or at least the terms, so we can take a look at what the range is?
We might have to block out the names on some of them, but we can certainly show you the agreements.
Or at least tell us who some of the people we may know. Maybe we can talk to them directly.
Sure, no problem with that. This pretty standard royalty in the industry is about 15% for the creative side and the book contribution that you're bringing to the table.
Having identified the issues, both sides now have their arms around the problem. There's no one right way to proceed at this point, but what Roger and Bruce do in the time between this meeting and the next one, which you will see shortly, is produce what might be called a framework agreement. A framework agreement is a little bit like the purchase and sales agreement that you get from a real estate broker. It basically spells out that the purchase price will be blank, the closing date will be blank, it's subject to contingencies which are blank. In other words, it lays out all the structure but leaves certain key blanks. The benefits of a framework agreement are that it makes sure you haven't left anything out. It allows you to see where you may still have problems, and it allows you to be very specific about where you have reached agreement without you having to lock yourself in on issues which remain open. If you do the job well, you will end up with a framework of an agreement that is acceptable to both sides as long as you can agree on one thing, how to fill in the blanks. Let's watch.
But let's talk about this framework agreement that we sent you the other day and just see if we've got the right issues and sort of the general sense of what we need to settle today. For example, on project development, I think we understand that you will administer the project and deliver and take care of the marketing and record keeping for it. We'll be responsible for the textbook and the ancillary materials for that, all the written materials that go with the product.
Teacher's guide. All
Teacher's guide.
Right, but on the written materials, while you'll take lead on creating that, I think we have some substantial input on the format, layout, design, packaging of it.
Right.
Yeah, all of the design considerations.
Let's get that. All right. And on the royalties, we haven't really gotten into the details on that, but I take it the structure would be something like what we've written here, that the royalty rate shall be blank % on the first, blank $1,000 or tens of thousands of dollars, and step up to blank on income thereafter.
Well, I have a problem with the two-step structure. I can tell you right now that standard for us would be a four-step structure. I would prefer to see a bottom level of, let's say, 7.5% for the first step, going up to 10 and 12.5 as the sales really go up. I mean, 15% would be something that we would be talking about if the course goes absolutely worldwide, if this becomes a top international product, then we're talking about a level with a 15%.
Okay, so
well, without agreeing to the figures,
right?
Four-step is standard. We can talk about 4 steps. We'll argue about when they cut in. Right. But at this stage, the agreement will say a 4-stage process. You can always object to the stages.
No, 4 steps.
Right. We need to agree on the numbers.
4 stages.
Obviously.
Then we're going to have to come back and look at the numbers. Right. And I'm
what they are and when it moves up.
The big question, let's just not put it off, is how do we measure our contributions to this joint venture? We're putting up all the ideas. We wrote the previous book, we'll write the textbook, we'll outline the content of the course, we're going to perform on the video. How are you going to weigh that in terms of our contribution to joint venture against the production and marketing that you people do?
Well, it's a tough one because it's hard to put a dollar value on your contributions and our contributions, but my feeling is that it's a 50-50 in-kind contribution.
Obviously, the underlying intellectual theory is coming from YouTube, but in how to put it together into a marketable package, the course is going to be more than what you've produced in the past. It's not just a book for mass market. It's a whole package. And in putting that together, it's our creative input that's creating the overall design that's going to be marketable. It's hard to quantify exactly who's bringing what to the table. But for us, it feels pretty comfortable to say, since we can't quantify it, and since there's an enormous amount of creative input on both sides, that 50-50 feels like a fair split.
Mm-hmm. I can see it's certainly easier than saying 40-60 or 60-40 or
30 years, say we're both bringing unmeasurable things, it's a wash transaction. If we did that on the in-kind contribution, then I suppose the easiest thing to do is have us each put up half of the cash required, and then the profits would be split 50. That makes it a 50-50 partnership from top to bottom. Let's tentatively, let me think about that without committing myself firmly. I'm prepared to go ahead on that basis, that assumption, until we check the figures out, what they look like.
Well, that's what we had in mind also.
Good. Well, then we'll just tentatively block out the joint venture that way. What else do you want to talk about?
Well, I think we should talk about this copyright issue, because that's a tough one for us. I mean, I guess
they still want it.
Yeah, and I think what we don't understand is, I mean, look, when we publish our books, the publishers own all kinds of aspects of the product. They completely control publishing it. It's an exclusive arrangement with our publishers. But in each case, I mean, the copyright's always in our name. I mean, why is this different? They handle what they need with these long agreements on licenses.
We're not a publisher, and joint ownership of the copyright is very important to us. We're a growing company, and we would like to have the ownership as an asset of our company. In terms of our image to our customers, to our suppliers, bankers that we may be dealing with, it's very important to us that we own the product or co-own the product. Becomes an asset of our company.
And even leaving aside the business arguments, throughout these negotiations, you talked about what feels fair. In terms of the kind of creative product we're coming up with, that's something which we're jointly creating. It's not like you going to a publisher and giving them a manuscript and they edit it a little bit and go ahead and publish it. That clearly is your product. But here we're going to be working with you for the next 6 months to create the course.
How do we handle all the restrictions about foreign rights and licensing and cross-this and who can do what with it, make an audio version or a cheaper version or whatever you can? How do we handle all that?
Well, we have some copyright language that we have developed in the past that I think will really address exactly what you're talking about.
I think it'll deal with it squarely. The last time we did a deal, we spent days with the authors group on exactly this point. They had the same concerns you have. I think we worked out great language. We'll give you copies of it tomorrow morning, and I'm sure you're going to love it.
Following the meeting you've just seen, the other side takes Roger and Bruce's framework agreement and turns it into a working draft of a complete agreement. There are still no commitments. There are still blanks. Nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. But they have a working draft. And in the next scene that you'll see, both sides go to work talking about the remaining issues on that working draft. Note the sense of movement that both sides achieve by working concretely on a draft in front of them, even though neither side has committed to anything on that draft.
I know you've had an opportunity to look at our draft, so let's talk. We think we're pretty close.
Oh, I think we are. I think it looks good. As I see it, we really only have probably 4 places that there's still some work to do. The first one is there are some blanks, still in the marketing and distribution stuff, especially about the list that we can provide. We brought a list of what I think we can do. We can talk about that. The second one, I really don't think we're in agreement yet on this co-ownership on the copyright. That's still causing us some concerns. The third one, the non-compete clause, seems just a little bit broad. I think we can probably rework it, but right now I'm not sure I can teach my class.
Well, I think we can resolve the non-competitive clause. We can certainly clarify that language, but I'm surprised to hear you raising objections at this point about the copyright clause. I thought we had agreed on co-ownership with that.
I thought you guys understood. We talked about this the last couple of meetings. There are really 2 issues here, and we are very clear on this. I thought you'd understood it. We need an asset we can show on our balance sheet. And when you look at what happens in the industry, every production we've ever done has always had co-ownership of the copyright.
Well, we've never had co-ownership.
Yeah, but you've been involved in producing books, Roger, and when you send a manuscript to a publisher, sure, you should retain the copyright as the author, because all they're doing is some minor editing. But here we're creating this joint venture together. And what we need is joint ownership so that we have a product that we worked on together. That's the whole idea. We want to work together.
Well, let me look at that, and let me also touch with our lawyers on that side, just to see whether they're getting any problems on that. But there's one issue, the 4th issue, which Bruce didn't get to, which is the royalty rate. We checked with others in the industry, and we find, although you apparently have never paid, and I give more than 15% at the top rate, others have gone up to 20. And if this product is going to be as great as you think it is, then when we hit the top of the scale, when we hit the home run category, we want a royalty rate as no one gets better, as good as the best, 20%, and that's the highest we find, and that's what we want.
Well, we have certainly complete confidence in the product, but we have never paid a 20% rate. I am willing to run some numbers on it, and we can discuss it again next week.
Why don't you do that? Why don't you do that?
And come back with another draft. Talk with, on the marketing, if you have questions, check by phone with me or with Bruce on that. Go over your lawyers. We'll have the draft over with our lawyers. And then let's see if we can meet by the end of next week and see if we can't close this deal.
After the meeting you've just seen, the parties exchanged drafts and consulted their lawyers in an attempt to narrow their differences. Notice how dramatically different this process is from the usual process, where you work out the terms maybe and then fill in all the details. This way, by filling in all the details first, by creating the framework, the parties create a vision of what it would be like to work together and therefore become emotionally committed to the idea of reaching agreement, even though they're still not legally committed. One way to narrow the remaining differences is to exchange contingent offers. In other words, to identify items that are lower cost to one side, high benefit to the other. In the meeting that you're about to see, there are two issues remaining on the table. One has to do with the top royalty rate. The second has to do with the question of who owns the copyright. Watch how Roger and Bruce narrow the differences on these two issues.
Well, we have two open issues. The ownership of the copyright and the top royalty rate. I understand you care more about the joint ownership. We, in turn, I think, care a lot about the top royalty rate. In book publishing and everywhere, we've insisted that we're the best and we get the standard that the highest are getting paid. I know you don't pay more than 15%. You haven't, but others have. They've paid 20. And that's what I would like to have, the top royalty rate. Not all the way up, but when we get to the top, I'd like it to be 20% from there on. And let me make you a firm offer. We will accept the joint ownership of the copyright that you would like if you let us change that top figure at the peak of the scale from 15% to 20.
Well, we thought you may come back with a firm 20%.
Oh.
We've run some numbers, and as long as you are willing to go along with the co-ownership, then we're in perfect agreement with that. We will change that final stage to 20%.
Okay, we've got an agreement. We got a deal. Congratulations.
Thank
This
you.
is going to be very good. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Let's review the key points in the process of moving towards closure. The key is to think about what the agreement might look like even before you begin to negotiate, but then not to commit to it until the very end. One very useful way of achieving this very tricky balancing act is to begin by listing the issues, then building a framework for agreement, then turning that framework into a comprehensive working draft, then exchanging drafts back and forth and revising them together. And finally, in narrowing the differences, think about contingent offers you can make. And one more thing. Think about being generous at the very end. It pays to have both sides go forward feeling satisfied.
Finale.
In this final segment, we thought that rather than just recapping the points that we've made in the previous 6 segments, that what we would do is have a conversation about each one of those segments, each one of the elements of the negotiation process. Because there's no one right way to negotiate, and we all have slightly differing views, and there's a richness and complexity to the negotiation process that we'd like to capture in this conversation amongst each other and with you.
We also want to look ahead and talk a little about how you put these elements together. What do you do the next day in the office? After you've seen the video and put it on the shelf, how do you keep all that in mind and how do you go forward? We got some tips and suggestions about what can be done about that. But first, let's turn to the elements. Bruce, what's your favorite point on interest?
Well, the point that I would make on interest is know your own. Because it's really not that easy sometimes to think about what you really want. The aphorism, be careful what you wish for, you might get it, I think, reflects the common wisdom that sometimes when you get what you've asked for, you don't feel so good. It's not really what you had in mind, and only then do you realize it. I think in the preparation phase for negotiation, one of the most important things is to really think through hard. What do I really need, want? How would I feel if I got that? That's the one, again and again, I see people who just haven't thought enough even about their own interests.
Well, I emphasize the other side's interest. I think in every conflict I know, almost every conflict, maybe every conflict, the other side is acting reasonably from their point of view. They're not being wrong. They may be wrong from my point of view, but from their own point of view, they're doing right. I have to say, what interest of theirs? How do they see what I'm asking them? How do their interests line up? So this is what they're doing. So I've take people and put them in a chair. I say, pretend you're the other client. I'll prepare someone by saying, you want to negotiate? Sit in that chair. That's the chair of the person you're going to negotiate with. I will let you feel how your arguments sound to him.
I like the unpacking part of the interests. In other words, you unpack the positions. You're always asking why not? And the place to be hard in a negotiation is not to be hard on your position. It's to be hard on your interests. In other words, if you're hard on your positions, it just leads to rigidification of both sides polarize, both sides lock in. But if you're hard on your interests, it can actually stimulate a creative process of searching for a solution that's good for both sides. So be hard on your interests, not on your positions.
What do you have on options? What's your big point?
Oh, boy. There's no limit on how creative you can be. Working on a case, I can spend an hour, I can spend a week, and I will think of new ways of putting it together. The more ways of bringing in another party, ways of making it, changing time, changing the parties, changing the time, will bring in something else. Oh, we can include that. Or we can make a partial deal without that. How about just this? So they're really the brainstorming, and there you have to postpone evaluation.
Yeah.
You have to say, we're brainstorming now, not until 10 o'clock are we going to start evaluating, or not until sometime. Take off your tie, your coat, this is a brainstorming session. We're just letting it rip. No negative comments, and there's no limit on creativity.
I like the metaphor of thinking what's in front of you on the table as you're negotiating is a pile of gold doubloons, which represents all the joint gain that each side can take out of that negotiation if only they can agree on one thing, which is, how do you divvy up the gold? Well, time and again, you find negotiations in which people walk away from the table, leaving all that joint gold on the table, or they reach agreements which leave a lot of the gold still on the table. And the way to get at that gold is to invent options.
I guess the lesson that I've really learned over time, and I find it in myself, I see it in other people, there's no one best answer. There's always another way of doing it. And often when people disagree with you, at first you think they're crazy. But then, you dig in, you come to see maybe they have another way of seeing it, maybe there's another option that makes sense. And I find, always look for another way, look for a better way, never be satisfied, and you'll find a better option. You can almost always find an option to get out of most problems anyway.
It's funny, standards is maybe the hardest thing, I think, for us to teach people, because standards are often misinterpreted as a club. I'm right, this is my principle, and on principle, I'm going to refuse to take that stand. People misinterpret standards. And so what I like to emphasize to people when I talk about standards is the importance of being open to reason. In other words, you're not advancing the standard as you are right. You're saying, look, I may be mistaken. Correct me if I'm mistaken, but it seems to me that a fair way to resolve this problem is to settle it this way. Show me where I'm wrong. Be open to reason.
What about people?
What about people? People is the hard one in the sense that, interests, options, standards, that's the dance that we go through as you talk about the substance. But all through that is a strand of people. That if you don't deal with the people right from the very beginning, all of that you're never going to get through. Because what you're going to find is that people's emotions, for instance, when they're angry or fearful or suspicious, that they will manifest themselves in the form of very rigid positions that people are taking, not because just they want that, but as a way of expressing their emotions.
Ways of dealing with emotion are first to feel your own. I try and check out my body. Are my palms sweating?
Is my neck tightening up? My stomach churning? Am I getting upset? First, check out my own feelings. Unless I'm sensitive to how I'm feeling, I will be insensitive to how you're feeling. Then, I want maybe willing to discuss my feelings. I can say, you know, I'm getting upset. Let's take a break. I'm not going to say, you're making me upset, that you're a racist. I'll say, no, I feel discriminated against. I've been feeling you have not been listening. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's the way I feel. Let's take 10 minutes and try and get back together again.
In business and in life, we have both the relationship interest that we have with the other party, and very often we have an ongoing relationship, and you have the substantive interest. You have to deal with both, and we've talked about some of how to do that. To me, it comes down, you want to be able to disagree without being disagreeable. And I think that comes down to treating the other side with respect, even when you don't agree with them. Now, I think that's something that, you know, you only learn from most people as you grow up. You learn it dealing with your kids. You learn it in business. People don't like it if they don't feel well treated, whether you agree or not, and they come back when they feel like you're fair and you treat them with real respect. Something we didn't say, but I really like to emphasize is, you know, beware, hear yourself in negotiation, hear what you're saying, and don't set yourself up as God. Don't say those things. I call it the godlike voice, where you say, no, the truth is, or that's wrong. Let me tell you. What do you feel when somebody else says that to you? You say, who are you to say something like that? Why are you any more in touch with the truth than I am? That's our notion of speak for yourself and take responsibility for the fact that you have perceptions, not final conclusions. You're not God. And the other side doesn't appreciate it very much if you suggest that you are.
A way of checking, hearing what you're saying, I think, is to adopt the observer role. Just for a moment, if you were a fly on the wall watching this interaction, what would you say is going wrong with it? If you were listening, if you were directing the stage set, if you were trying to watch, you say going to the balcony in a theater, looking at yourself on stage. Just look at yourself from the outside point of view. Check out your own position, check out the other side's position, and then look at the third position at what is the interaction taking place. Are they wasting their time? What are they doing? And then get back in yourself and see if you can't fix it up again.
And remember that separating the people from the problem doesn't mean sweeping the people under the rug and just dealing with the problem. It means dealing with the people independently of dealing with the problem, dealing with the people first, because negotiators are people first, and you need to deal with them right off the bat. Negotiators are not computers, they're human beings.
Now, on BATNA, I think the biggest point I would make is be an optimist. I mean, think about your BATNA, know it, develop it, and be realistic. But at the same time, don't get all down about the fact that